Goku sacrifices all his divine power to achieve a new transformation completely without divine power, and this leaves Whis completely surprised. Is this the end of Divine Ki in Dragon Ball Super? Calm down, I will explain everything to you. So, without further delay, let's go. Dragon Ball Super, since its beginning, brought a revolution to the Dragon Ball universe by introducing concepts that had never been explored in depth in the original work. Among all these innovations, the biggest addition was undoubtedly divine power, a layer of strength and energy that transcends the limits of mortals and redefines what it means to be truly powerful in Dragon Ball. The emergence of Super Saiyan God marked the starting point of this transformation, showing that Goku's potential no longer had known boundaries, but rather paths that could be explored with discipline, training, and comprehension of divine ki. Super Saiyan God is not just a power boost form, it represents a totally new concept, the harmonization between mortal and divine energy. Unlike classic transformations, where pure strength is superimposed on technique, here Goku needed to connect with an energy that transcends his own essence. The ritual of 5 Saiyans providing part of their power to Goku symbolizes this union and shows that divine power is not only individual, but also collaborative. It was the first time we saw Goku explore something that was not just brute force, but a spiritual refinement of his power. After conquering Super Saiyan God, Goku began to understand the importance of molding his body and mind to sustain that energy. He needed to learn to control divine ki, something that required a new type of training, much more meticulous and introspective than any previous session. Unlike the physical power that Goku mastered since childhood, divine ki demands precision, calmness, and total self-consciousness. It was in this process that he began to glimpse limits that previously seemed insurmountable, and to understand that to fight against gods, it was necessary to think and react divinely. The next step was Super Saiyan Blue or Super Saiyan God Super Saiyan, where Goku combines divine power with the power of a traditional Super Saiyan. This form symbolizes the perfect synthesis between strength and divinity, showing that Goku does not just need brute transformation but total integration of his ki with the divine. The control of this form requires extreme concentration and emotional control, as any excess power could easily destabilize the body. This fusion between mortality and divinity elevated Goku to levels that no other warrior had ever reached. Over time, constant training and the experience of facing gods and cosmic entities allowed Goku to further expand his comprehension of divine power. He began to perceive that, more than strength or speed, divine ki grants sharp perception and almost precognitive reactions. It was this foundation that prepared the ground for the arrival of Ultra Instinct, where divine power reaches its purest and most instinctive form. In Ultra Instinct, Goku transcends not only physical limits but also mental ones, becoming a true incarnation of divine energy and motion. Ultra Instinct is not just a technique, it is a state of being. Here, divine power manifests in perfect reflexes, automatic movement, and instantaneous attack. Goku, upon achieving this form, demonstrates that divine power is not just something acquired but something that is internalized and becomes an intrinsic part of the warrior. He no longer relies on brute force or conventional strategies. His movements flow naturally, almost as if the universe itself were guiding his actions. It is the climax of harmonization between body, mind, and divine energy. Another essential aspect of divine power is its capacity to evolve as the warrior grows. Unlike old forms, which had clear and defined limits, divine ki adapts and responds to Goku's skill, experience, and intelligence. This means that every battle, every challenge not only tests his power, but also refines it. Every confrontation against enemies like Beerus, Jiren, or Moro serves as a catalyst to expand the limits of divine ki, demonstrating that Dragon Ball Super is not just about physical fights, but about continuous growth and constant evolution. The introduction of divine power also brought a new strategic dimension to battles. Goku does not fight only with strength, he fights with energy, perception, and absolute control. This completely alters the dynamic of the fights, making them more complex and fascinating. Enemies that were previously insurmountable now demand more than mere strength. They demand understanding, adaptation, and mastery of divine ki. This change elevates the level of Dragon Ball Super, making every combat not only exciting but also intellectually stimulating for the audience. Furthermore, divine power redefined the hierarchy within the Dragon Ball universe. Before, the power scale was practically limited to the strongest mortals. With divine ki, Goku and other warriors now compete at an almost equal level to the gods, breaking barriers and challenging old concepts. This creates unprecedented narrative possibilities, allowing stories to explore the confrontation between mortals and divinities more deeply, with conflicts that go beyond physical strength and touch the essence of the universe. Goku's evolution with divine power also influenced the other characters. Vegeta, for example, upon recognizing the importance of divine ki, began his own journey of refinement, seeking not only to surpass Goku but also to achieve a divine understanding of his own power. This creates a dynamic of healthy rivalry but also of mutual learning, showing that divine power is not only individual but something that inspires collective growth. Another crucial point is how Divine Ki and Ultra Instinct expanded the vision of Goku's potential. Before, the idea of absolute power seemed limited to mortal forms. With these additions, Goku becomes an entity in constant evolution, capable of challenging gods, surpassing limits, and redefining the concept of strength within the universe. Every transformation becomes a stage of this continuous evolution, making the narrative richer and deeper than ever. Dragon Ball Super, therefore, is not just about epic battles. It is about the journey of a warrior who transcends his mortal limitations and approaches the divine. Divine power, combined with Super Saiyan God and Ultra Instinct, symbolizes this incessant search for growth, harmony, and perfection. Goku molds himself, learns, adapts, and transforms, showing that true power is not just in strength, but in the comprehension and integration of something greater than himself. The greatest contribution of Dragon Ball Super to the franchise's legacy is precisely this, elevating Goku and the characters to a level where mortality and divinity coexist. Super Saiyan God, Divine Ki, and Ultra Instinct are not just transformations or techniques, they are the materialization of continuous evolution, discipline, and the connection with universal forces. Dragon Ball Super showed that, even after decades, the series still has the power to innovate, surprise, and redefine the concept of strength within its own universe. It is precisely at this point that Dragon Ball Super shows its greatest narrative boldness. The possibility of Goku partially abandoning the concept of traditional divine power in favor of something even more radical. With true Ultra Instinct, he demonstrates that he no longer needs to limit himself to the restrictions of pure divine ki, nor depend on the absolute serenity required by previous forms. Here, the warrior can use his emotions, rage, determination, and above all, his own Saiyan nature, transforming every feeling into fuel for his power. This evolution represents a profound rupture in the philosophy of Dragon Ball fights. Until then, divine power demanded discipline, calm, and almost Zen control. But Goku, by exploring true Ultra Instinct, shows that it is possible to transcend these concepts without losing efficiency. He does not need to suppress his Saiyan essence. On the contrary, he can embrace it, fusing brute strength, fury, and the characteristic battle instinct of his race with the supreme technique of automatic movements and intuitive perception. The idea of combining true Ultra Instinct with Super Saiyan opens up an unprecedented possibility, the so-called Saiyan Instinct. This form not only enhances Goku's power to unimaginable levels, but also allows him to use instinctive strategies typical of a Saiyan warrior, something that Divine Ki alone could not fully provide. It is a fusion of instinct, emotion, and divine energy, a synthesis of everything Goku has learned and become throughout his journey. The Saiyan Instinct also redefines the relationship between mortality and divinity. While Super Saiyan Blue and Super Saiyan God require an almost meditative and divine posture, this new form allows Goku to maintain his mortal essence, his fighting instincts, and his more human emotions, but amplified to the maximum by the power of true Ultra Instinct. This creates a much more flexible and adaptable dynamic, where strategy, improvisation, and emotional intensity become an integral part of the combat. Furthermore, this evolution allows for the exploration of new narratives within Dragon Ball Super. Goku would no longer have to depend on gods or specific training to achieve absolute power. He becomes in himself an almost self-sufficient force. The possibility of activating the Saiyan Instinct in critical moments brings tension and expectation to every fight, as the audience not only witnesses power explosions but also the full expression of Goku's personality and instinct fused to perfection. Another fascinating consequence is how this affects adversaries. Enemies who were previously vulnerable only to Divine Ki now face an unpredictable form of combat where emotion, instinct, and divinity coexist. Goku becomes not only stronger but also more versatile. capable of adapting his attacks and defenses according to the situation and the very flow of the battle, something that no previous form could combine with such naturalness. Finally, the Saiyan Instinct symbolizes Goku's true evolution as a character. He does not completely abandon divine power. On the contrary, he internalizes it and adapts it to his own nature, creating something unique. This form shows that Dragon Ball Super is not limited to presenting new transformations, but also to rethinking the concept of power within the work, balancing emotion, instinct, and divinity in a warrior who continues to surprise and redefine his own limits. But comment on what you thought of all this, and don't forget the like. Thank you very much for the support from all of you, and until next time.